Okay, I hope that everybody can hear me. We're going to look at another writing, another essay, and we're going to look at how we can improve this essay, or how I recommend that the student improves the essay. So this is actually an essay by the same student, but I will be using a lot of other students soon. It's just that I only have his permission at the moment. But I think quite a few of my other students will want me to do the same. And it's something I've never done before. So it's just an idea that I had this week. And of course, I will be using other students. This is actually by the same student. But over the next few weeks, I hope to be using a lot of other essays. And I'm doing this because I know that people make similar mistakes. Even when they're from different countries, they still make similar mistakes in English. And so I think if you look at the mistakes that other people make, you will see some mistakes that you also make. And so it will remind you that you shouldn't be saying these things, or you shouldn't be putting it in this way. So hello to Uzbekistan. Hello, Nilufa. And I'm sorry if I mispronounced that name. And good morning, Tom Thomas. Okay, so let's get started. One highly controversial current topic is how companies should interact with their local and regional communities. Now, I've made a few corrections here. I didn't like on-demand about companies. I understood you meant a hot topic. Yeah. In other words, a topic which is regularly discussed by a lot of different people. And if it's regularly discussed and debated, if it's a topic where there is a lot of argument, then we would call it highly controversial. That's a nice adverb and adjective collocation. And so I highly recommend using adverb collocations. And so highly controversial works very well here. I think that's what the student meant. One highly controversial current topic is how companies, now remember we need a subject here, how companies should interact. Now I recommend should rather than must. In speech, I don't really think must is just a stronger version of should. Yeah, but here we are talking about our opinion. Yeah, and with opinion, should is a better word. Must sounds a little bit stronger than just opinion. So I wouldn't say that must is wrong. It's not. And in speech, it's fine. I wouldn't even notice in speech. But in an essay, if you are talking about what should be done or shouldn't be done, if you are giving your opinion, and here we're talking about how companies should behave, what kind of relationship they should have to the society in which they operate, and what kind of taxes they should pay, things like that. So we do should. So good morning, Sabir, and I'm glad you think there are good vibes from this class, Tom. Sometimes I think I get a bit moody and irritable, and I'm sorry if I am rude with any of my students, but it happens sometimes. But I'm glad you think there are good vibes. Excellent. Good man, Tom. Okay, so yeah, use should for any time when you're talking about rights and wrongs, ethics, really. It's a question of should. And here we are discussing the best way that a society can operate. So definitely should is a better word. So some opinion leaders and politicians propose more taxes and obligations upon the corporations, although other scholars point out the high risk behind this kind of practice. Now one thing I want to point out, and this isn't a simple point, is that although is a subordinating conjunction and not a conjunctive adverb. Now, if you've got no idea what I'm talking about, I highly recommend, I strongly suggest that you watch the video on YouTube called Subordinating Conjunction or Conjunctive Adverb. It's on my channel. And I really do talk about the nitty-gritty in that class of what does it actually mean philosophically to be a conjunctive adverb, and what does it actually mean to be a subordinating conjunction. And what it means, if you're a subordinating conjunction, you can make one sentence out of the main and the subclause, and we must. If we use a full stop before the although, like the student's done here, and we just have although other scholars point out the high risk behind this kind of practice, that is not a main clause, and that's not a complete thought. So that's not a complete sentence. And that's why this one's wrong. That's why I had to change the full stop to a comma, because really we've got main clause, comma, contrasting subordinate clause. Yeah, quite often you have a comma before although because it contrasts. But what although isn't, it's not a conjunctive adverb, and the student is using it as though it were a conjunctive adverb. If we look further down, we see the same mistake again. In the next paragraph, you'll see I've changed a capital letter in although to a little letter because I need it to be two clauses if we're going to use the word although. Now, what we can do, if you do want to put a full stop after corporations, if you do want to break this sentence up, you don't use the word although because it's a subordinating conjunction. You need to use a conjunctive adverb. You could have full stop, nevertheless, comma. You could have full stop, however, comma. You could have full stop, nonetheless, comma. All of those will work. Full stop, however, comma. All of those will work because they're conjunctive adverbs. They're not subordinating conjunctions. Okay, so there is a difference between the two, and I want you to know that although is a subordinating conjunction, and as long as you use it as though it were, you will always get it correct. Okay, and to point out, yeah, not to point at is that it's the physical, you use your finger to point at something. So it's a physical gesture, pointing at something. We often say it's rude to point, yeah, but I think I point all the time during lessons, and I think lots of people point, and I think we often point when we're angry. So maybe that's why I point all the time. But point at means that. Point out means highlight, emphasize, bring forward for discussion. Yeah, when you point something out, you're letting everybody know about, you're highlighting it. So point out is the one that you really want to use in your essays most of the time. You might be talking about pointing at something, and I would agree that you can occasionally use point at metaphorically. You might say our results or our sales for this period point at several weaknesses in the company or something like that. Point out would work there as well, though. So point at, you might use it metaphorically, meaning they lead us towards, because, yeah, point at, they direct us towards. But that's rare, and usually it's the physical one. And point out means highlight, okay? So thanks, Kino, for those lovely words. I do appreciate it, Kino fan. So let me carry on. So point out, not point. So it is irrefutable that social responsibility must be accepted by all companies. Yeah, we'll just take that main clause first. I think we accept a responsibility rather than endure a responsibility. I suppose you might do it, must be endured. It certainly makes it sound like it's a pain then, that it's not easy and that it's something they must endure as a burden. And I'm not sure that all companies would put it like that. I think that they would say that we're delighted to have a social conscience, yeah, and we're delighted to take social responsibility, to accept social responsibility. So I changed it to accepted. So good morning, Mary. So it is irrefutable. I suppose you could drop the that here, but I think that makes it clearer that this is what's irrefutable. It's extra position, this. And if you use the subordinating conjunction that, it does make it clearer that that clause is what is irrefutable. It's what the dummy pronoun it is referring to. Excuse me. So it must be accepted by all companies. I'm not sure what's he put there, by... Oh, by any companies, the student had written. So by all companies here, I think we mean by all and not by any. We tend to use any in negatives and questions, and I don't see any negative here or question. So then I've changed the although again, but I want to make clear that if you want to put a full stop after companies, you can, but you can use you must use a conjunctive adverb like nevertheless, nonetheless, however. One crucial fact, many times overlooked. Yeah. So I had to change it to overlooked because this is clearly past tense. Yeah. One crucial fact, many times overlooked. Or overlooked is really a participle here. And the crucial fact was overlooked or has been overlooked. So we need a passive participle and not an active participle. Yeah, they'll call it the past participle, but really they mean passive participle. So we need overlooked and not overlooked, not overlook. Is that those institutions usually account for most of the state revenue. Yeah, and I like to account for here. I think we very often do use it with financial things, with budgets, for example, because you can see the word count in the middle of account. And so I thought this sounded good, that those institutions usually account for, perhaps we should say the taxes that those institutions pay. That would be more specific. And I do recommend being pedantic. I really do. So perhaps we should write, to be really clear, that that the taxes that those institutions pay usually account for most of the state revenue. Something like that would be good. Okay. According and yeah, you've got to have the state revenue, because we were telling the listener what kind of revenue, the state revenue, and not some other kind of revenue. Okay, according to this, almost all of the budget of any social benefit. Notice noun of noun requires a the again. I keep talking about this just because I feel sorry for people who have to learn articles, a, an, and the. And one little trick or one very important pattern that you might find helpful to spot is that you usually see the noun of noun. It's rare that you break that rule. There are some situations, and if any of you know of them, bring them up, and please, we'll discuss them on the chat. But it's rare that you'll see noun of noun without a the when it's not a quantifier, when it's not a lot of, a few of, or a number of. So the budget of any social benefit. Yeah, I normally call anything that the government give you, like housing benefit, child benefit. There are other benefits, sickness benefit, incapacity benefit. There are loads of benefits available, and we use the word benefit. We don't, I suppose assistance is sometimes used, but it's not as clear to me as a Brit, and I must admit they'd probably call it welfare or something like that in the States. They may not say benefit. We certainly do. And so the budget of any social benefit and other collective support already comes directly from that source. We need an adverb here. Yeah, not direct, a direct question. Direct is an adjective, but go directly, come directly, speak directly. If you are modifying a verb, you need an adverb and not an adjective. Adjectives modify nouns, adverbs modify verbs. Being so, it is of core importance to thoroughly look into, notice thoroughly, look, yeah, and that's a good collocation, but your thoroughly is an adverb, so it's the one we need here because it's modifying. Look into how these resources have been applied by the government, especially. Now, I want to make it clear that especially is not a conjunctive adverb. In fact, we don't have a main clause here anyway. We need a complete main clause in any sentence, in anything academic. Definitely make each and every sentence contain a main clause, which means a subject and a verb. That's all main clause means. And if we look carefully, we can't say especially before any populist proposition of further raising corporate taxes as a complete sentence. It's not a complete thought. There's no subject and verb. Yeah, we'd have to say something like especially, well, we'd have to change it completely. But we've got a complete thought if we just make sure that it's not a full stop before especially, but if it's a comma before especially, because then we've got the main clause before the comma, and we've got this adverbial after the comma, but it's just an adverbial phrase. It's not a clause. Yet please make sure that any sentence in an academic essay, it must contain a subject and a verb somewhere. It absolutely must, between the two full stops. So especially before any populist proposition of further, I suggested raising corporate taxes rather than charging them, because what I don't like is the pronoun. And I want this student to focus on pronouns for sure, because that's where a lot of the confusion lies. But charging them, charging who? Yeah, who? I can't see clearly which person that's referring to, but I assume it means charging the companies. Yeah, I assume it means charging the companies, but using them for the companies is quite ambiguous anyway, because them is a person pronoun and company may be an it. Yeah, although I suppose plural things are them as well. But let's be really clear here. What do we actually mean? The proposition of further raising taxes for businesses. So raising corporate taxes sounded good to me. Okay, let's go a little bit further. Furthermore, comma, he's good with his moreovers and furthermores and things like this. According to this, there are a lot of good linking expressions in this. These aspects are connected to the key claim raised by opponents of those ideas. So I made quite a few changes here. I wanted these aspects are in connection with, okay, maybe in connection with something, but we'd say these aspects are connected to. Well, then we got the verb, yeah. Well, I suppose are in connection with. You've got are in connection. I normally say connect to, in connection to. I suppose you might say connection with sometimes, but for me, it's connected to. So these aspects are connected to the key claim raised by opponents of those ideas. The noun from oppose is opponent. So your opponent is like your enemy or certainly your rival. Let's go a little bit further down because we're almost done here. Raised by opponents of those ideas. One cornerstone of economic health in each society is employment. Almost every job opportunity is provided by this kind of business in a direct or indirect way. Okay, this is good because these are adjectives describing a noun way. Imposing an excessive burden upon them could be deleterious. Okay, this is a nice word that I don't use ever, but it's still a word, so why not? And notice I've changed impose to... maybe it was imposing. I've changed to imposing upon them. I can't exactly remember what I've changed here, but we need a gerund because this is subject. So gerund, imposing an excessive burden upon them. That's your subject. Could be deleterious. There's your verb, and there's your. It's a modal verb, so we've got. Sorry, it's a copular verb, so we've got an adjective at the end. It may trigger unemployment and economic stagnation, which consequently will be dwindling. No, will reduce. We need something active, yeah, because we're saying that the unemployment will reduce the funds, yeah, it will decrease the funds. So I changed it to will reduce any dwindling funds. Dwindling is an adjective. I suppose you can say will be dwindling, but you need to say the funds will be dwindling and not the employment will be dwindling, because you mean the funds will be dwindling because of the unemployment that is triggered. So which will reduce any dwindling funds available for promoting the very wealth of the whole society. So I changed that. I needed available, really, the funds that were available. Yeah, I suppose you could just say of any funds for promoting. You can get rid of the available, but I like the sound of it in there. Okay, moreover, companies are becoming progressively stateless. It means that we must have a subject. We must repeat companies with a pronoun. So it means that subject, it means that the companies, it means that they can easily change where they are based with minimal obstacles, comma, leaving behind. Now, I can't have a full stop here because this is not a complete thought again. This is a participle phrase, leaving behind overwhelming state regulations and less attractive taxes. That's a participle phrase and describing the companies, isn't it? It's describing the they. It means that the companies, blah, 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 leaving behind overwhelming state regulations and less attractive taxes. So it's describing those companies, and we need a comma before the participle. Okay, it will result in decadence and poverty. In conclusion, this issue deserves a thorough consideration. Look, it's a noun consideration. Anything that ends in ation is a noun, more or less. And so we need an adjective, thorough, and not an adverb, thoroughly. You can thoroughly examine something, but thorough consideration in order that our society prospers. Yeah, I tried to make it clear on this last bit that we don't say for, we say to here, yeah, to keep society prosperous. That would be another way of putting it. That would work as well. To keep society prosperous. And it's because we use for plus noun, but to plus infinitive, yeah? So, sorry, a thorough consideration, this would be here, yeah, something like this, to keep society prosperous. This issue deserves a thorough consideration to keep society prosperous, or in order that our society prospers. Yeah, let's get rid of that at the end. Okay, I hope that is clear. Let's see if there have been any more comments. I don't think there have been so many. So hello to Varuna and good morning to Amit. So I hope that was useful. I hope that some of those mistakes perhaps highlighted your own mistakes and made you aware that that you ought to avoid doing these things. I will be continuing probably tomorrow at the same time. I haven't checked my timetable, but I think I'll be back here at exactly the same time tomorrow. So if anybody would like to come again to the class, please do. I'm not sure if I'll do writing or something else. Haven't decided yet. But thanks everybody for coming. I do appreciate it. I do appreciate your support. Please come to skype-lessons.com if you want to see any of these old classes, because they don't stay on YouTube. They stay on my website. And please, if you're interested in buying any books, I've got 2 books up here that you can buy. One is on phrasal verbs. There are loads of phrasal verbs in that one. Certainly point out is in there somewhere. You can see it's a thick book, so it's £20. I'm afraid it's quite expensive, but that's for the black and white copy on Amazon, and the PDF is color, and you can buy that on my website. For grammar, if you're wondering what I'm talking about when I'm saying things like participles or parallel structure or comma splices, then that's all in here, and it's in here. I show how to analyze grammar in literature, how to analyze the grammar in sentences you find in GCSE texts, which are the texts that the kids, the exams the kids have to do when they're 16 here. So yeah, 1984, Animal Farm, Lord of the Flies and Frankenstein. Those 4 books are analysed, the grammar's analysed, and it shows you how you can analyse that literature as well in terms of parts of speech, phrases, clauses, that kind of stuff. Okay, so thanks everybody. Hope to see you all soon.